Everyone, it is Dani'i and welcome to this update video on the tropics. And in this video, we're going to be talking about our two systems over in the Eastern Pacific, Invest 91E, as well as Hurricane Hilda. And over in the Atlantic, there is the potential for us to have some significant development as we're going to be heading into the middle part of the month. And so before I go into details, okay, let us kickstart things with what is happening over in the Eastern Pacific. So I mentioned earlier that there were two systems because our Depression 9 has now dissipated. It is just remnants remaining for the system, and it is not of any concern. And so next up, we have Invest 91E. At this time, it is given a high 80% chance to develop, and it is possible that this could become a depression maybe in the next day or two. And the next name to be used for this hurricane season for the Eastern Pacific is Ignacio. And if this develops, it will acquire the name Ignacio since our Depression 9 failed to become a tropical storm. And on satellite view here, we're seeing that it is not very organized. Convection is lacking towards the east of the system, but as time goes by, we can see it becoming more symmetrical and better organized as it approaches tropical cyclone status. And in terms of Hurricane Hilda, so let's go to the National Hurricane Center's cone forecast. So we're seeing here that the system has maximum sustained winds of 85 miles per hour. And so yesterday it rapidly intensified into a hurricane, but since it became a Cat 1, it has been quite stagnant at that intensity. So we're not expecting much more intensification of the system, but it is expected to maintain its hurricane intensity maybe for the next day or so, and maybe by Tuesday it is expected to be downgraded back to a tropical storm and eventually dissipate in the open Pacific. And so looking at satellite view of it, we're seeing here that Hilda does not look very defined in terms of being a hurricane. We don't have an eye feature developing, and it is not a very organized either, but it is battling some unfavorable conditions, and that is also the reason we're not expecting much more intensification of the system. And so now let us move on over to the Atlantic Basin. And so we're seeing here that we don't have much going on, just some shower and thunderstorm activity off the East Coast, just off North Carolina. And we also have some shower and thunderstorm activity taking place in the vicinity of the Cabo Verde Islands, a bit low latitude westward. And the Caribbean is relatively clear, as well as the Gulf of Mexico, with not much going on at all. And so the GFS model as well as the Euro model are showing that we could have a tropical storm developing, potentially a hurricane, as we're going to be headed into the middle part of the month. And so we're going to be going to those two model runs later down in this video. So let's take a look at the ocean temperature map. And so we're seeing here that most of the North Atlantic Basin is getting quite favorable in terms of the main development region. Specifically, the Gulf is already piping hot and has the perfect ingredients for us to have a tropical system developing. The Caribbean, especially the northwestern section in the vicinity of the Yucatan and west of Jamaica, is looking quite favorable as well. We're seeing some 30 degrees Celsius out there, and some parts of the main development region going more towards the coast of Africa is still a bit cool. But if we have our waves moving across a favorable environment and headed towards the Caribbean or just north of the Caribbean, and we have the wind shear being favorable and little Saharan dust, then those are the perfect ingredients for us to have a tropical cyclone developing, and the potential is there for some rapid intensification to occur as well. And so now let's take a look at the wind shear map. And so the different colors here mean different shear intensities. When we see the greens, that means that the environment is quite favorable to support our tropical cyclones developing. The yellows mean neutral, which means that they won't really impact our systems too much. But as we head towards the reds, that is when our systems are really going to be struggling, because a strong wind shear is what usually rip up the thunderstorms and cut them off and prevent our systems from intensifying much. So when you see a lot of those reds persistent, it means that any tropical cyclone trying to develop is really going to be having a struggle. And so we're seeing that we have the favorable shear across all of the Gulf of Mexico and some of the most northwesterly sections of the Caribbean and even some parts of the Atlantic. But most of the Caribbean is in a region of unfavorable and neutral shear right now, and we don't have any disturbances moving across the regions that has the potential to develop into a tropical cyclone. So now let us go on to the Saharan dust. So this is what has been keeping us all tropical cyclone free for the last month or so since Elsa, because it induces a very unfavorable and hostile environment. So because we're not having any of that moisture, that is the reason we're not having any tropical cyclones developing throughout the month of July, aside from Hurricane Elsa. And so with a decrease in the Saharan dust, however, conditions will be very, very favorable for us to be having tropical cyclones developing. And so that is expected to be the story as we're going to be heading near the peak of the hurricane season, which is next month in September. And throughout this month, it is possible that we could see maybe a storm or two. So now let's go on to the GFS model run and see what is anticipated for this hurricane season as we head into the middle part of August. So this is by Saturday, the 7th of the month. And so we are seeing a low pressure system here just to the southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, a 1009 millibar low pressure system. And in case you're not familiar with this map, it is a map showing the isobars, which are lines of equal pressure. And so when you see them, which are the black lines, coming closer together in a circular manner with the pressure below 1030 millibars, that is a low pressure system and can be our tropical cyclones. So that is what we're looking for. And if you're wondering what is that system over in the EPAC, yes, it is a 989 millibar low, which means that it is probably a strong tropical storm at that point as well, that the GFS model is showing. And so let's go further out to Tuesday, the 10th of the month. And so here we have a 999 millibar low pressure system midway between the Lesser Antilles and the Cabo Verde Islands. So this is getting quite interesting. As we head to Friday, the 13th, we see a 990 millibar system. It's definitely moving a bit to the west-northwest here, and it is located somewhat a bit to the east of the Leeward Islands. And so let's go to Monday the 16th, and here we have a definite hurricane at this point, a 976 millibar low pressure system. Fortunately, the GFS is not showing it being a threat to land, but is it going to be headed for the US? Let's go to August 17th, and we see here that it is a 954 millibar system. That is most likely a high-end category 3 or potentially a weak category 4 system. And don't let that weak fool you. A cat 4 is a very monstrous tropical cyclone. And so this is the end of the model run, and this is quite interesting. And if you've been seeing my previous videos, you would have seen where I said that GFS has been quite consistent with something trying to develop around mid-August, and here we have it showing something a lot more significant than it was earlier. And so it is certainly possible, because as we head into the latter part of this month going into next month, that is when we're really going to be having a lot of tropical cyclone activity taking place. And so let's go on to the Euro model, and this is Monday the 9th of August, and there we have it. So Euro is also agreeing on a tropical system developing. There we have the isobars kind of coming together out in the Atlantic. And as we head to Wednesday the 11th of August, there we have the system, but Euro is not showing it being as strong, and it is showing it a bit more south than what the GFS is showing. So it is certainly possible that we could have these systems developing. So once we have these models being quite consistent with something developing, we really have to pay attention to it, especially for the fact that we are approaching the peak of the season. So again, guys, this is not guaranteed to take place. We have to wait and see what the eventual outcome is going to be, but it is very important that we stay up to date with what is taking place out there, and I will be doing just that for you throughout the rest of this hurricane season. And so that is it for this updated video, and if you found it to be quite informative, please give a thumbs up, and you can also share your thoughts with me in the comments or ask a question. I'll try to respond as best and as soon as I can. And just remember to always be weather-wise, and I will keep you updated as time goes by.